Well, hello, Kathy Marcino. How are you?
I'm good, Dan. How are you?
Good, good. It's been a day where I've gotten to see you twice now, so I'd consider that a pretty good day already.
It's an above average Friday for sure.
It is an above average Friday. Well, welcome to the Lead Different podcast. Welcome everyone who is joining our live premiere. I want to let everybody know we are going to start doing our live premieres every 2 weeks. So we're going to be even more choosy about who we live premiere. We're going to continue. If you're following the Lead Different podcast on YouTube, on Podbean, or whatever Apple podcast, wherever you're following us, we're still going to have the podcast. We're still going to put a new episode out. I think we're going to still try to put one out every week. But as we always do, we like to talk to leaders who are leading different. And today we have the pleasure of talking to Kathy Marcino, who she and I are involved in a project to bring neurodivergent leaders, or people who are willing to lead different, together. And we're going to do that sometime in July. Stay tuned. We'll tell you more details about that. But Kathy and I were just on a call talking about that very topic. So Kathy, what are you excited about this week?
Oh my gosh. I think I told you that my coaching through conflict workshop is gearing up next month. And so we had a meeting this morning with all the other facilitators. And then on our last call, kind of gave me a few more ideas to incorporate into my presentation. So really excited about that. But I'm super excited to be here and see what kind of questions people have and thoughts on conflict in the workplace, communication in the workplace, what's working, what's not.
Love it. So here's what we're going to do, guys. We're going to, as we always do. So Kathy and I are doing our pre-show chat right now. Sunil's in the background. As soon as Kathy and I are done with this part of the conversation, here's what I want you to do. Make sure, if you're watching us on LinkedIn, on YouTube, or on Facebook, whatever your platform is, any comments you put into the chat are going to show up for both of us. Kathy and I are going to be hiding in the background, and we're going to be listening to you either on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. And we'll be able to respond to your comments. I see we got a thumbs up already from somebody on Facebook, Kathy. So I don't know how much of a presence you have there, but we've got a fan there. And we'll just continue to go through the questions. What we're going to talk about today, and you guys know that every guest that comes on, we know their YOS. And so, with Kathy, we took her through that process, and we haven't even done a formal debrief. She's a better way, challenge, contribute. So she's one of my people because she's got contribute and challenge. She's got 2 of my top 3. She just has them in a different order, but she leads with better way. And those of you who know those better way people, she's an innovator. She's somebody who likes to take things that exist and make them even better. So it's no surprise that, she just got off that call with a bunch of other divergent thinkers and got some more ideas of things she can do. Right. So we're going to talk about, though, is Kathy is also a DISC certified trainer, right? So that is her assessment of choice. And one of the things I just looked back in my archives, Kathy, I did a show on using the YOS with other assessments. So with DISC, with Strength Finders, with Kolbe, and I had a panel. And so I'll send you the link to that. Those of you that are interested, that was on my previous show, Why Not Wednesday, or actually speaking why to why. So Kathy, anything you want to say to our audience before we sign off and air the episode?
I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for taking the time to listen, and can't wait to learn more about you.
Thank you so much, guys. We're going to put Kathy's contact information across the bottom of the screen throughout the podcast. We'll put some stuff in the chat. So if you want to get a hold of Kathy, want to learn more about what she does, if conflict resolution or conflict management or better communication is something you want to do, Kathy is your person. The reason we have her on the show, number 1, is she's a person who believes in leading different. And number 2, she's someone who's out here in the coaching industry who has been doing it for a long time successfully. And I know that many of you are maybe starting out, or maybe looking at how do I get from survival to thriving? And well, Kathy's a great example of the consistency that it takes to make it in the business. So I'm excited to share this interview with you. Sunil, why don't you take it away? And Kathy, why don't you and I fade into the background?
Okay.
Welcome to Lead Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership, This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different, because great leaders change the world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lead Different podcast. Today's guest is Kathy Marcino. Cannot wait for you guys to meet her. Kathy Marcino is a business communication coach specializing in transforming corporate culture through personalized coaching that aligns with individual strengths and communication styles. She has 20 years of real-life experience in sales management, team building, and marketing in the pharmaceutical industry, so we come from similar worlds. Kathy combines personal insight with practical strategies to help leaders and teams unlock their potential. As a seasoned executive coach with 2 decades of experience in pharmaceutical sales management and team building, Kathy offers a unique blend of personal insight and practical strategies to help leaders and teams achieve exceptional results. We are looking forward to hearing from you, Kathy. Without any further ado, welcome Kathy Marcino. How are you, Kathy?
Hi, great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being on, Kathy. I'm so glad we were able to get you on here. Now let's move our screens around because we want to put you up here. You know, periodically we're going to move you that way. We're going to show you this way too, so that we can feature you, and then we can get some great video clips. And I know we're going to hear some wisdom from you today. We were just talking in the pre-show, Kathy, about one of your specialties which is conflict management, or leading through conflict. So we're definitely going to get into that issue. But tell us, the other thing we were talking about in the pre-show is what's exciting for you right now. And I know the NFL playoffs are on your mind. So tell us your prediction, because I think we're going to air this right around that time when the playoffs will have ended. So we're going to get to see if your prediction is correct.
You know what? My father gave me 2 pieces of advice. One is always have a backup plan. And the second one, never, ever bet on the Eagles. I've been born and raised in Philadelphia. I've been bleeding green for all of my years. I won't say for how many. So I don't even want to say anything. You know, the Phillies fans. Philly fans we are just as crazy as we're portrayed. I mean, there's some really great ones, but there's some crazy ones. And I haven't, tried to jump any poles or anything crazy like that, but we do have our superstitions. So you could probably tell where I'm leaning, but I can't actually say it out loud. But just wish me luck.
You know what? We're going to wish you luck, because as we talked about, one of the things I did it's been now a couple of years, is I stopped following sports, Kathy. And I heard from someone, I'm sure it was a well-intentioned motivational speaker, talked about how much time we can save. And now with YouTube, right, we can watch an entire game in 5 minutes, watch all the highlights. So I now follow sports that way. If somebody brings something up, I'll say, well, you know what, let me go take a look. I can see the highlights and we can have a conversation. Right. So I realized, though, I also live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We don't have any major sports teams. We have a AAA baseball, we have minor league soccer. You have all of the sports. So it probably would be harder for me if I lived in a big city, to not follow a team. And I do follow some teams, just I don't watch anymore. So we're going to let you off the hook and not make you make a prediction today. So Kathy, what are you excited about right now? What's exciting for you at KMM Consulting?
As we mentioned, we were talking about in the pre-show a little bit what some of the projects I'm working on. I am putting together, our local Chamber of Commerce here has a annual masterclass in leadership. And we have anywhere between 25 and 50 attendees across industries here in Bucks County. And it's a 4-month series. And I'm doing the session on managing conflict in April. And so that's what I'm really super excited about right now. I'm a member of the board for, this is my 3rd year now on the board. And I wasn't able to participate last year. So I'm really excited about, the theme of the sessions are leadership coaching with yourself. Like, so we're starting with the first session being self-awareness, a lot of things that you talk about too, Dan, in your why assessment. And then self-leadership. What's your leadership style? How do you prefer to communicate? How do you react and respond to conflict? So that's my piece. So it's a nice 4-month flow for seasoned leaders and new leaders, whether they're managing for the first time or they've been promoted into a different role. And so that's what I'm really excited about right now for the first half of this year.
I love that. So that's a 4-month course. And what kind of executives and leaders are signing up for this course? Because this is a big commitment, right? So how often are you meeting? And
it is a big commitment. It's a full 3/4 of the day, once a month. So we're starting in February and we're wrapping up in June. And I was looking at the list today. We've got manufacturers, we have car dealerships, we have pharmaceuticals, we have so it's across different industries for sure here. And we've got everybody from a brand new hire from the field who was a rep that's now coming into management to CEOs. So it's going to be a great group. I'm really looking forward to it.
And your topic, we were talking in the pre-show about this. This is such a great topic. I was listening to Jordan Peterson recently, and he was talking about some rules for life. I did a series on his 12 rules for life over the Christmas break. But one of the rules was just to deal with conflict. And one of the things he said was conflict delayed is conflict multiplied. So as somebody who teaches on how to deal with conflict, what are your thoughts on that phrase?
I love that phrase. Another one that just came to mind is Wayne Dyer, conflict can't happen without your participation. You don't sit by and watch it. You're usually a part of it somehow.
That makes a lot of sense.
A lot of times we think, oh, it's this person's fault. Our first knee-jerk reaction is playing the blame game, right? And so you really have to stop and think, and what's your role in this drama that you're now participating in? Did you start it? Were you triggered by a word or someone's tone or something else in the conversation? There must have been something going on that caused you to react and respond this way. And so, always trying to find what that cause is first before you jump on to somebody else and it's their fault.
You mentioned something that we hear a lot, triggered, right? And then the other thing you mentioned is self-awareness earlier and self-leadership. So I know that you're a big proponent of the DISC assessment to help people become more self-aware. What role does self-awareness play in having better self-leadership so that you know what your triggers are and maybe you can manage them better? So I know that's a 3-part question, but tell us about your process for helping clients gain better self-awareness.
I mean, the DISC assessment for sure, just because, we can sit and reflect all we want, but there's something about reading a question and finding it maybe difficult to answer. And different assessments are designed that way to really get you to think. And it could be, 49% versus 51%, but that 51% based on that answer is pretty telling about your level of self-awareness. And I think it's key for so many reasons. First of all, leadership's an inside job, right? So it has to start with you. Without self-awareness, you're not going to get very far, right? And I think a lot of times people are very surprised when they find out how they're perceived by other people. I think they're surprised by maybe, oh, wow, what I said and how I said it. I had no idea how that was going to impact that person. And so I think when you look into some of these tools and you're able to see the insights, it's like, oh, okay. You get that aha moment that, you know what? I understand. I had no idea that would have affected that person that way. And so I think the more you know how you prefer to communicate, how you prefer to lead, how you react and respond in a given situation is only going to help you adapt to everybody else and how they prefer to be communicated with, how they handle stress and conflict. So you have to, it's a two-parter, right? You have to know yourself first, take all that insight, leverage it, and how you adapt and interact with everyone else.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Especially, I love the phrase that you said, leadership is an inside job. It starts, you've got to, one of our tenets is know yourself before you know your team. Because you have to know your team in order to lead them, but you have to start with yourself. And that self-awareness you talk about, I know the DISC is such a comprehensive tool, right? You can get your colors and your letters, and again, you can keep it very simple, but you can also receive a lot of information.
Oh yeah.
And then you talked about understanding how you're perceived. Do you also use a 360 feedback tool with leaders when you're working with it? And tell me what tool you use, or how do you use it in order to help leaders be more self-aware?
What you just said, I just want to reply on that, because that's a great example of how people prefer to communicate and receive information and process information. Because I can give you a 6-page report, or I could give you a 63-page report. Right. If I know their behavior style, I know my C's are going to want that 63-page report. Our high I's are going to give me the 6-page, because you're going to probably lose me after the 3rd page anyway. So it's so telling just by knowing the amount of information. We've got those folks that make decisions right away, right? Sometimes impulsively. And then you have the other half who want every detail and want to dot every I and cross every T and take forever to make a decision.
Right.
So the more you know yourself first, right? How do I, so if I'm a leader and I'm high D, say, and I'm off and running and saying, well, do this, do this, do this. And I have a high S on my team, they're like, well, wait, how are we supposed to do this? I need more information. And they're already out the door, And so I need to know, wow, okay, maybe I need to stop and say, hey, did you get that? What else do you need from me? Do you need more information? Do you need more time? And then back to the team piece, it's what do you need to tell your manager or your boss? Find your voice here. I need more time. Don't just, people make assumptions, right? And one of the things I pretty much start every presentation with is, people aren't trying to piss you off here, but not everybody thinks like you. Right. As much as you want them to, as much as you think they do, they don't. Yeah. And people are never going to have the same sense of urgency that you do, the same sense of pride that you do, especially if you're dealing with a smaller company, right? And the owner and the 3 other employees are all in one room, and you're trying to build a startup company. And the CEO who's put their whole savings into this is not going to have the same sense of urgency of the person that's maybe doing the social media. And I'm no disrespect to any of that. I'm just trying to come up with an example as you really think, I feel this way. Why don't they?
Right.
So you need to know how you feel. And then, okay, I either have to slow my roll. I have to change my pace. I have to change my tone. I have to change my words to make sure that what I'm really resonates with everybody else.
That was
a long answer, Dan. I'm sorry though. I was everywhere with that one. But.
No, I think you covered a lot of ground. And one of the things that I noticed in there, something I talk about all the time is the golden rule versus the platinum rule. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, Kathy. The golden rule says treat others the way you would like to be treated, right? So you and I are both fellow IDs on the DISC profile. There's a way we like to receive information. But just because we like to receive information that way, and you mentioned it, does not mean that the people that work for us or the people with whom we work or our clients like to receive information the same way. And you mentioned a perfect example. So I call that the platinum rule. The platinum rule says treat others the way they want to be treated. Talk to them the way they like to be talked to. So do we use the DISC on everybody? Do I use the why discovery with everybody that I work with? Yes, I do, because I don't want to guess how you like to receive information. I'd like to know. And then when I know, I can tailor my information to you, just like you talked about. If they're a high C, they're going to receive information in a different way versus the person that is going to be running out the door. Just give me the Cliff's notes and let me get started, right? They want to get started today. Or a high D that just, hey, again, more doers versus analyzers. So is there a particular challenge that you have found in converting from your style to others? Sounds like you're very well versed in helping people. If you don't have somebody's DISC profile or their why profile, how do you make sure that you're talking to people in their language?
That's a great question. And the struggle's real, Dan, because you could tell I'm all over the place, right?
Yes.
So I talk with my hands and I talk rather quickly. One of my clients is a finance guy.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we don't have Zoom, we're on the phone. And I know that I have to slow down because I know that he's going to tune me out, right? But then there's just sometimes that I'm just like, say something. And then when he doesn't, I have to fill the silence, and then I get nervous chatter. So I have to really check myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing this for so long. I mean, I was certified in DISC back in 2015.
Okay.
But then back in my pharma days, I used it for hiring and team training and things like that. So for my own team. So I know I can pretty much tell. But so to answer your question, I've had to check myself definitely a couple of times, but there's some words here and there, especially if you don't know somebody for the first time, you can tell by their pace, right? Mm-hmm. You can tell body language is key too.
Right.
Really. And now that we're starting to see each other again, that's great. But that's when a lot of assumptions were made too, right? When we were all remote and you missed that body language piece.
Right.
And that's when a lot of assumptions were made. And that's, so, I got a lot of business during that time, Dan, but
right.
Right. For sure. But so I've had to do that. But if you are reading something or maybe listening to someone in a conversation and you hear them say the word, I feel this, or I felt this way, chances are they're probably more of an I and an S. And then if someone sends you an email or you hear something, well, I think this, I believe this, they're going to be more of a D and a C. So there's just like little trick words in there that I could say, okay, somebody's saying, I think, I'm not going to be sharing a lot of emotion here. I'm going to be very detailed. I'm going to be very concise and direct. Whereas if I'm getting a lot of I feel, then I know I've got probably someone that makes decisions based on emotion. It's not 100% guaranteed, but it's a pretty good rule to follow.
No, and that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense because we, as you mentioned, the DISC gives us such great and detailed descriptions of the communication styles. And then there's primary and secondary. And so you can really understand as you read those descriptions, you can almost apply them to the person as you're conducting that initial discovery call with the client, right? And kind of know what's your rule. I've made it a rule, Kathy. I rarely work with anyone that I don't know their why profile. It just, again, makes it easier for me. What's your rule with the assessment tool that you use, the DISC?
I mean, I guess if I had to say a rule per se is when someone requests either one-on-one coaching or team coaching, I have to believe that they're open to it. That's kind of my rule. If we haven't really had a full-blown discovery session yet.
Right.
If I'm sitting in, a networking group or someplace else where I'm approached by someone, I can tell somebody that's like, you know what, I could probably use you. Can you come in and work with that person? Or maybe we need to talk, versus I really could do that. So if I had to say, would I work with someone? I may say, I'm not sure. Let's do a DISC assessment and then I can tell. And that's usually what disarms them a little bit, because then it's, okay. Oh, wow. I had no idea that I saw that. But as far as taking a coaching engagement, I really want to know that they want to do the work. But I really enjoy them seeing the results for the first time. And especially asking or telling me, this isn't me. I don't know what this thing is. This isn't me. And I'm like, I didn't answer it for you. You took it.
Right.
These are your answers. These are your feelings. These are your beliefs. This is how you feel like you react and respond in a certain situation. These are your behaviors and preferences, not mine. And then when you have the conversation and you're able to apply it to different examples, I guess another rule is I need real-time information. Give me real life examples of something that's going on with a colleague, a client, a manager that you're struggling with. And chances are I can narrow it down to a couple of things. It's communication style where you're butting heads. They want to text, you want to send an email with all of these details. They're not reading it. You're not giving a deadline to somebody, and therefore they're not doing it as quickly as you want. But so it kind of goes both ways.
Love that. Thank you. Yeah, and I love some of those conversations that you're talking about, because they're so important, right?
Yeah.
And so as somebody who, and this is, the leaders and the coaches that are going to be listening to this podcast, I want to get into this question because this is important, because you help business leaders stop wasting time dealing with workplace conflict.
Yeah.
And build high-performing collaborative teams. And I know a lot of people are saying, Dan, isn't that what you do too? Because our whole point is, everybody, we all have talented, amazing teams that work for us, but sometimes we're not using them in the right way. Sometimes we have people sitting in the wrong seat on the bus. What is it that Kathy Marcino brings to the table to help business leaders stop wasting time? And what is it that you specifically deal with? Because here's the question I know leaders have is, what's it costing me? So let's start with that question. What do you know in terms of the cost of unresolved workplace conflict?
I mean, I can't quote any figures, but I would say that, what's the cost of losing a high performer? Mm-hmm. What's the cost of rehiring and training that particular person? That's your internal one. How about losing a client because you don't really understand, how they communicate, and showing up in the way that maybe you promised when you made the sale, and then all of a sudden maybe you did a bait and switch and now somebody else took over the sale. They're a completely different style than you. I see this a lot of time with salespeople. And I guess another, answer to what am I bringing to the table is my experience, and being in pharmaceuticals for almost 20 years and so many different roles, and being on the front line, standing in front of a sales operations person who is trying to get their territories configured in the right way so that they can pay out bonuses. You don't want to stand there and say, sorry, we messed up that particular zip code, and I don't think that your sales rep is going to get their bonus for another 60 or 90 days. I've had to say that. I lived it, but I don't ever want to do it again. And so I've been there. I know what it's like when you're dealing with a salesperson and they're telling you all the features and benefits and value of your service, but then when you have to deal with somebody else that's actually using the data and they're a completely different person, you have got to know that and adapt your style to theirs and provide them with the information that they need, not maybe the person that bought the service from you. So I see that so much in sales with, a salesperson can get the meeting, right? The salesperson can get in there because they're charismatic, but then all of a sudden they hand it off to somebody else, right?
Yes.
To actually create the deliverable. And you know this, Dan, the salesperson and the operations, if they're not, so a lot of conflict I talk about is internal conflict too.
Right.
So there's client conflict and then there's internal conflict. You
Correct.
have to work. It's so in sync, like, synchronized swimming. You guys have to be to actually get this deliverable to your client. So again, I'm giving you a really long answer again to a short question, but I think my experience in seeing all sides of that is really what I can impart on leaders and saying, I've been there. I know the situation that you're facing. I have faced it myself. I've had that client that you're talking about. I've had that direct report that you're dealing with. Let's look at what we can do about it first.
Mm-hmm.
What role did we play? That's what we started out with, right? What role are we playing in this drama? And how can we apply, adapt our style to somebody else's and see if we can fix this in a more, an effective way, in a more collaborative way.
One of the best ways that I know, and I think, thank you for that answer, because I don't mind long answers. The more you talk, the more valuable the interview is, because when people hear from me all the time, we want to hear from our guests. So don't never apologize for long answers. We like those. Kathy, I think one of the best ways that I know to talk about what you can see is tell us a success story. Tell us about a time that you went in, and helped somebody resolve conflict and what that led to. So I almost want to, I call it the STAR format. I don't know if you remember in learning how to interview, when I came out of the military, I went through military recruiting agency, and he taught us, tell your stories this way. What was the situation? Yeah. What was the task? What was the action you took? And what was the result? So take us maybe through a STAR format or a hero's journey. Somebody called, hey, I've got a team. I've got a tremendous team. We're just not performing at our highest level. Kathy comes in, she's got the cape, and you did the assessment. You assessed the situation. You brought something that maybe they weren't looking at. You helped them see something that they weren't seeing, and you helped resolve the conflict. And then what was the outcome? What was the hero's journey? How did they become the hero in their own story, so that they were actually performing at a higher level when Kathy was done with them?
Oh boy. Well, I hope they're not listening. Without any, I'll say I had an organization, and they had a 10-person team that was now getting a new vice president. Their vice president decided it was a VP of sales role, and they were taking a different job in a different company. And so they brought in somebody from the outside. And Dan, pharmaceuticals is so incestuous, right? It's like you can jump from one client to another, and it's like, wait a minute, didn't I just meet you at whatever? But anyway, when you bring somebody in from the outside, they feel like they have all the answers, and they can fix whatever problem there is. Okay, whether it's a people problem, an operations problem, whatever, they can fix it all because they've just been brought in. Well, what happens to those people now? A couple of things. For whatever reason, they weren't considered for the role. And or now it's okay, well, I wasn't considered for the role. Why? What am I lacking? And then who is this person coming in and telling me all this when they've been here 10 minutes and I've been here 10 years? So the vice president went to HR and was saying that they were struggling with some of the meetings that they were having, some pushback that they were getting. And HR reached out to me and shared the situation with me. And I was like, oh, okay. So I had a one-on-one with the new leader first to just kind of get their side. And then we did a DISC assessment and we talked about that. So now we kind of understand, he was able to understand his style and how he was being perceived. Okay. And then we did assessments for the rest of the team. And I mean, it was really a real eye opener for a lot of people, but especially this new leader, because they were a very, very high D on the DISC scale. scale, and a lot of the folks were S's and a few I's. There weren't really even that many C's. And so if you think about conflict, it's really going to be 90% of the time when somebody's coming from a place of logic and a place of emotion when you're making decisions. And that's where the heads start to butt. And so we had, I did one-on-ones with the team. And like I said, I did a one-on-one with him. And then I did a group training with all of them. And I have to say, there was one person that actually burst into tears because they were feeling so discouraged, really, about their own performance. And they kind of felt so, and I can remember this so vividly because I felt so badly for them. They really felt like they just weren't doing a good job at all and weren't being valued at all. And so having them be able to express this to this new manager and then their peers, and it's like, this is how I operate. This is who I am. This is how I operate. And kind of like, thanks for taking the time to see that now. And so when you get everybody in a room and you see now how each of you operates,
right,
is when that makes sense. I get, yes, that's why she's saying that. That's why he's doing this way. This is why I'm not getting a response with them. And this is why I'm really clashing with this leader. And this is why the leader is really clashing with their team. And so it's very level setting, I think. So I like everybody from, the CEO down to be in the room when we're doing this. You can't just say, oh, you know what, just have my team do it and I'll follow up with you after. No. They need to learn as much about you as you need to learn about them. That is the only way that this is going to work successfully. And this is how and no one's going to change. People's like, well, this is me. I'm not going to change. And you see those people going and they're sitting back saying, you know what, I don't even know why I'm here. You're right. You're not going to change. No one's asking you to change. What we're asking you to do is understand how you operate and now adapt that to your colleagues and to your manager and say, hey, you know what? I need this from you. Or if you could do something this way, maybe next time we work together, it'll go faster. Or you know what? Sometimes I don't share information enough, and I apologize for that. And I'm going to start sharing information now. I've always felt, a little cautious about that, and I put a lot of work into it. And sometimes I don't like to share, but I see that by sharing this with you and the team is really necessary for us to work collaboratively together and cohesively together to get this done. So I hope that shares the story. I don't really know if there was one hero. I think the whole team in that scenario were heroes.
Well, I think what you were able to do, and I love the format that you took them through. So you met one-on-one with the leader.
Mm-hmm.
And then you did one-on-ones with each of the members of the team, and then you brought them all together, right?
Yeah.
And that's really, I think, where from what I heard, that's really where the breakthroughs happened, right? Because they're hearing each other's strengths, challenges, how they like to be communicated with. And the other thing that you said that was really important is, it's not about changing who you are. Self-awareness isn't about, so many times I get people, right? So if somebody's a high D and they say, well, I've got to really work on being a better S. Well, you'll never be a great S. If you're a D, you're a D. Same thing with the YOS discovery. I tell people, it's not about changing who you are. It's about being the best you can be. Given the deck, given the cards you've been dealt, how do you use that to the best of your ability? And how do you surround yourself with people who can make up for the areas where you're not strong, rather than trying to go work on a deficiency, which we all know that we're much better off when we work on our strengths and multiply those versus working on an area that just doesn't come naturally to us. Why would we spend time doing that? So I think you talked a little bit about that. It's about being the best you can be, and then being able to communicate it. And I think when you talk about that employee who broke down in tears because they really started understanding themselves. I call those magical aha moments where people really understand, I get it now. And it does come with some emotion, right? So that's a great process. We call it at Wine on Leadership, we call it Know Yourself. know your team, know each other. And then you said something that's really important. Know your leader. Step 4.
Yeah.
Because you know, when everybody in there is doing the disc and they understand themselves, they understand their process, the next step is, hey, how do we apply this to our leader? Well, guess what? If he's in the room, and we go through it in our workshops, we go through it an entire area. Hey, let's sell something to the leader. And we have them come up with an idea, something they've been thinking about that they haven't brought to them. And we say, okay, tell them the idea. And then we say, okay, now that you know their profile, tell them the idea using their language.
Yes.
And inevitably you see the person nodding their head. And as you know, from being a sales leader, that's a universal buying signal. When the person's doing this, I always used to tell people, hey, stop talking, put the contract in front of them, and let's move on, right? The leader starts nodding their head. You can present the dumbest idea, but if you say it using the right language, all of a sudden they're nodding. And they're like, in their head, they're thinking, this is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. But for some reason, it sounds good because you're talking in their language, right?
Exactly. And I'm glad you used the word language, because it's like speaking the same language. And a good example of that is, the decision maker sometimes isn't always the person that you have the relationship with, right?
Yes.
So the person that you have the relationship with is, you probably have a banter because you've known them for a long time. You've built this relationship. All of a sudden, the decision maker now is dollars and cents. So you have to have 2 different sales messages, right? So when you're dealing with the leader, it's okay. Typically you're going to make a decision for 2 reasons, right? You either want to save money or save time.
Right.
So how am I going to present that to the leader versus so I now know my high I has to tap into my very low C, take the emotion out of my voice, my conversation, and my communication, whether it's an email or not, and making sure, am I including facts and figures in here? Are we talking about saving percent of something, whatever X, Y, and Z is? Am I speaking in the language that is demonstrating the value that what I'm selling is worth it?
Absolutely.
In a way that they see it. Whereas, maybe my influencer, the person I have the relationship with, says, you know what, I like your fill in the blank so much better because of all these other features. Right. This person now only likes it so much better for 2 features. I need to make sure I have those 2 features.
Exactly. Right. You're getting to write the RFP, basically, right? They're letting you know what they need so that you're getting to bring in what it is that you specifically bring to the table. Kathy, one of the questions I love to ask, because our company's called Why Not Leadership. This is the Lead Different podcast. Tell us before, can you believe it? We've been talking for over half an hour. This is such a fun conversation.
Because I gave long answers. I'm a high I. I get this.
Well, you've done a great job so far. This is a great question I like to ask is, tell us about your biggest why not moment. We believe that in life, at the end of our life, we're not going to regret the things we did. We're going to regret the things we didn't do. So tell us about a time you said why not to an opportunity in your life or in your career, whether it's personal, professional. What's a big why not moment? You're so glad you said why not and went for it.
Probably having children, for sure. That's probably my first one, because we were married 10 years and we were both traveling with our jobs, and it was just one of those, is it ever really the right time, right? So now I can't think of it. I can't think of my life without them. So that was probably my biggest why not. But I think really jumping into forming my own consulting company was just up there in the level of decision making, whether to start a family, because it was going to be an all-consuming thing. And I realized that I'm not good at a lot of things, that I used to have the support back, in my company, right? So I'm not very, now I'm dealing with payroll, and now I'm dealing with a lot of things, marketing, and where I had all of that provided to me before. And so it was a real why not give it a shot. You've got the experience, you've got the expertise, you've got the contacts, you've got a huge network to tap into that you've built, for 2 decades. Why not give it a shot? And I did, and I'm still here 10 years later. And my children are 23 and 16.
Yeah.
So they're my 2 why nots.
Well, congratulations, number one, on the decision to have children. Sounds like you don't regret that.
Not at all.
Boy and girl, boy and boy. What's the
2 girls?
So you have 2 girls, 23 and 16. I'm sure you have 0 regrets there. And I think there's parallels between your 2 why not moments, because starting a business is like it's a child, right? It is your baby, and just like a baby, it's very vulnerable when it's young, right? And there's a lot of things you can do that could cause that person, that baby, not to thrive or even live, right?
Yeah.
You could
not to mention mom's emotions. I was an emotional wreck. I didn't know.
So your kids are 23 and 16. So they were 6 and 13. No, you've been in business for 10 years, right? So they were 6 and 13. So on top of having a first grader and a teenager in the house, you said, why not? Let's throw a new business into that
I don't
chaos.
do anything half-assed, and you wonder why I specialize in conflict.
Yes. Well, with a teenage girl, so I have a 13-year-old, so I understand. This is my second teenage girl that I've gone through, and conflict is a constant, right? We have to continually deal with it, and deal with it in a way that we can keep that relationship, because it's so important. So congratulations to you. I think that's a great story, and I love the idea of your 3 children. So what were their names? Do you mind sharing their names? If you don't want to share their names, we won't.
No, Olivia and Ava.
So Olivia, Ava, and your 3rd child, 𝗂𝗵𝗆 Consulting, right? So you've got three kids, and I
have a dog, Charlie, who he's not here right now, but he has a huge Eagles bandana. He's my other child, and he's 8.
There you go. And so you've got an 8-year-old too. So, well, congratulations, Kathy. It has been such a pleasure sharing your thoughts with our audience. And is there anything that that I haven't asked? One of the things I do want to make sure we ask is, how do people get a hold of you? If they want to work with Kathy, they like what they heard, and they perhaps have a team that they want to get to that next level, how do they get a hold of Kathy Marcino?
Oh, thank you. My LinkedIn, Kathleen Marcino on LinkedIn for sure. I have a lot of blogs out there, some videos. My website, 𝗂𝗵𝗆.com. I am on Blue Sky, Twitter, and Facebook. I also have a free resource for anybody that's interested. It's 5 tips on how to turn conflict into a positive. I think maybe you have the link. If not, that's on all my social pages. I guess one thing I want to say is, and sometimes people think, oh, I don't have any conflict. They see conflict and like, I don't need her.
Right.
Everything's great. And I hope so. And it probably is. But I think we can be the greatest communicators in the world, but it can only be improved. And no, you may not have any conflict right now. Everybody's getting along, singing Kumbaya. That's great. But what happens when they're not? It's kind of like, why wait until when everything blows up to figure out how do I handle it and fix the situation, when you can get the tools that you need to really, maximize the great communication that you have and the great collaboration that you have, so that when something does happen and someone leaves or you get a new person in, all of a sudden there's conflict within 24 hours, you kind of already know, or at least you have a good foundation of how to start fixing it.
I love what you just said, Kathy. And let me just say, as a veteran sales professional, you just said something that really helps, because we often think we want to call Kathy in when we're having conflict, right? She's a conflict specialist, but you just said, hey, you know what? If you can call me in when you're having conflict, or you probably should call me in before you're having conflict. Guess what? You need Kathy always. So I love that. We all need a little bit of Kathy Marcino and dealing with conflict.
Everybody needs
anytime. Absolutely. I think that's fantastic. That's a great message. What do you say we end the show on that note, Kathy?
Why not?
I love it. Thank you so much. You read the pre-show notes. I think I'm gonna do a compilation of everybody on the show saying why not at the end of the show. So thank you for joining us today, Kathy.
Well, that's a good idea. That'd be fun.
I think that'll be a whole lot of fun. So we'll see if we can get everybody. Sunil, I know, can get that done. Guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for welcoming my guest, Kathy Marcino. Please reach out to her. Don't forget to like the podcast. Don't forget to share it with your friends. We're going to put out some clips. Make sure you listen to Kathy and make sure you follow her. Follow us on LinkedIn. Throw your comments on there and subscribe. That's the way we can get more of our message to other leaders out there who want to lead different. Thank you so much for being on today, Kathy.
Thank you so much. And go the Philadelphia team.
Yes, the Philadelphia team.
Not going to say the name. Yeah.
Well, I won't break the rule. Take care, Kathy. It's great seeing you.
Thanks, Dan.
This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different because great leaders change the world.
Why not leadership? Why not lead different? When you do the things that everyone else does, you get the same results as everyone else gets. Let's do things a little different. Let's lead different. And ask yourself this.